And we're back. What is up, Anaheim? I'm joined by AxelToss. We got our next match coming up, and it's going to be TLO versus MajOr.
Yes, that is accurate. Of course, we just had Polt versus Scarlet Epic 2-1. What a great, tasty way to start the evening. We won't worry about what happened before that.
Yeah, I mean,
Nothing.
I really actually think this is an important moment for Polt. He's getting that momentum kicked off in his group. In the other group, this is another one of those big deciding matches. I think a lot of people think that TLO and MajOr are the two strongest players in their group. Yeah. You always have to worry about who's coming from the open bracket. You could get a Dongray Goo or a Jaedong or another player with Dong in their name in your group. And that player's probably going to get first. So this can be very much so another battle for that second, third place spot.
Yeah, very important match, and I think both these players understand that too. They're going to be taking this very seriously, obviously, but you got to think about it. It's their first match of the evening too, so they've been having to wait a little bit, so I don't necessarily know what's running through their minds, but they know absolutely that whoever wins this one, they're giving themselves a very good chance at advancing through the group, because you're playing up against someone who's very strong.
It's the hardest effort first.
Yes.
Now, typically we do pre-match interviews, but we know we're behind. So we're immediately going into the game. It's going to be on Overgrowth. And I think that this is a very difficult map for ZerG against the usual style we see from MajOr.
You know, it's funny, difficult map for ZerG. TLO, when I consider TLO, I think of, I don't necessarily think ZerG. I mean, I think ZerG obviously, but he has so many radical styles, I think. And you never really know what you're going to get kind of a thing where he's a guy who's going to see this map, and he's going to know it's going to be in a lot of tournaments in the future, and he's going to have a myriad of different kind of styles to try to fit it. So I don't think MajOr should come into this thinking, okay, I know exactly what TLO is going to do, kind of a thing. That's a dangerous game to play when you're playing against TLO, because he's not like any other ZerG.
Let's introduce his opponent, who is known for playing extremely well when everyone's doing standard things. It is MajOr.
And his opponent in the top right-hand location of Overgrowth Ladder Edition, coming all the way from Germany and representing Team Liquid. Give it up for TLO!
And you know what you were talking about at the start? I think there's two big risks that I see coming for MajOr. Again, if he gets his style going and everyone's in the standard box, he's magnificent to watch. But if he gets surprised or if his opponent's playing unorthodoxly, he really crumbles fast. And the second thing is he tends to lose track of unit groups, sometimes in very key situations.
Don't want to do that. And that's perfectly said. MajOr, when he, if you're talking about a standard build order and his ability to execute it, it's great. And he might have a vision in his mind of where he wants the game to go, and he can go along that vision incredibly well. He's very good mechanics. And obviously very good concept of that type of gameplay. But TLO, if he can get up in MajOr's face somehow, if he can, mess with the momentum of the game at all, it could be very difficult for MajOr. So a lot of interesting little subtle storylines that are going to be proceeding forward through this game number one on Overgrowth. MajOr, I consider a very macro-based guy. He loves going late game. TLO perhaps a little bit similar, but you never know when TLO is going to throw something silly at you. So a lot of things to keep an eye on.
Well, I mean, we're already seeing TLO do something pretty typical. He's getting up his expansion and then double drone and then pool and then double drone and then gas, trying to maximize the basics, I guess I'd say. Not being cautious. He doesn't predict that he's going to be up against Marines for certain. I mean, look at this brave Overlord who flew at the barracks. Polt builds Marines and snipes those barracks. But of course, MajOr is known for being relentlessly standard.
Yeah, getting that Reaper out, of course. This is one of the most fun units to make, obviously, in the beginning of Terran versus ZerG. If you want to get out on the map, you want to get a little bit of early map control, show some presence on the map as well, and kind of mess with your opponent, Reaper's the way to go. Maybe 2 Reapers, maybe even 3, and then you try to maybe snipe a drone or 2. But on the other side of things, TLO is going to be looking out for this. Shouldn't lose any drones. I'd be very, very surprised if he did. Has some Lings out there. Not really expecting to kill that Reaper with those Lings. Just trying to keep that Reaper away from those drones, because you want that economy to be bolstering in the beginning of a ZvT. You want to be just hitting that D button on your keyboard to make those drones, and that's all you want to do. So what MajOr's doing right here, he's trying to kill those drones and maybe you know, kind of scare TLO, but TLO's good enough to know that this is just a basic Reaper type scout. We don't want to lose that though. And look at the queen at the bottom. Brilliant play there by TLO.
Oh my God,
Can he track it down though?
Oh my God, TLO.
Oh no! Where's Reaper go? Where's he go?
Trap it. The Reaper
you can't jump down.
Yeah, he's going to try to kite into the main base.
Okay.
He's locked himself in. He's hoping to kite until his healing kicks in.
Oh.
This is a that is
TLO,
a very, very rare move to see MajOr lose that starting Reaper, and we're seeing the response from MajOr.
That's cool.
To build an extra round of Marines because he suddenly has a little bit less control, suddenly has a little bit of a blank spot.
2 Hellions on the way from MajOr going straight to that star part. Only 1 gas on the map, so no crazy tech decisions are going to be happening. Now, I know units lost is going to be in favor of the Terran player here, or excuse me, the ZerG player, but Reaper not going to have a massive impact on the game, though it could be one of those things where it's happened to you, where you might lose an early game unit at the beginning of the game and it kind of tilts you going forward. I don't expect that to necessarily happen to MajOr, but we kind of talked about that. You know, he has his standard way of doing things, and if TLO messes with it, which kind of might have happened there, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, for MajOr, I think that it wouldn't be as much tilt.
Right.
And more that sort of panic of, because that Reaper, you deal the damage, you pull out, you have complete map coverage, it holds a watchtower, and now you don't have that.
No, you don't.
It does look like MajOr, though, is not really got himself too worked up by it. Still making Marines, getting the medevac out, and he... I see an armory.
Ah, I know what that means.
It's very much so looking like the Hellbat Marine medevac push.
Very scary indeed, and of course we could talk about, is TLO going to scout that, but it's one of those builds that even when you scout it, it can be very difficult to deal with. So MajOr going to be trying to dictate the pace of this game very early. We don't have any engineering base out either, so it's not like he's focusing on upgrades. He's really going to be investing a lot into a timing push, and it's going to be up to TLO to scout it and then make the right decisions to deal with it. He has a Baneling list about halfway done, 10lings on the way just to deal with these Hellions so far, working on upgrades, but again, he doesn't necessarily know that this is coming.
The key pieces to TLO's defense are the queens to eliminate the medevacs. The Banelings can get in there and deal a little bit of damage. Once the medevacs are down, there's no hope of microing. But the Baneling nest is not quite done. TLO missed time.
5 queens. I like the 5 queens. I like the 5 queens for sure, but trying to make some Banelings here. The Ling's backing up too, but look at these Hellbats. They're not taking any prisoners, going for the middle line, actually trying to target down a queen, and this is so hard to deal with. A medevac overhead helping heal it as well, and TLO trying to pull out all the stops. Does he have enough to clean this up?
Well, the Baneling pops out, gets a nice blast, but a lot of damage has been dealt. In fact, far more so than should be necessary, tumbling down to 37, 42. There's only 7 drones that have been killed off. Normally, players will lose a lot more in this spot. And TLO, I mean, manages to stay alive, but I think should look to Scarlet for a cleaner opening to defend that sort of push.
Sure. Harvesters, 44 for the Terran player, 35 for the ZerG. And for those of you who are a little bit newer at Starcraft 2, when you're talking about Terran versus ZerG, the ZerG generally wants to be a little bit ahead because those mules from the Terran really bolster that economy. So if we're taking a bird's eye view of this game as a whole, MajOr is certainly going to be happy with how that opening went. Now the decision is up to TLO. What does he do from here? Does he go for a big attack? Does he stay back and drone up?
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, if TLO doesn't have the economic advantage, what edge does he try to pick up? And in this spot, TLO's saying, you know what? If you have fewer units because you went for this attack, I'm going to do a counter and hope that you don't have a lot. And there's the burst. And MajOr! Oh my God, he got nothing into the... He got nothing into the bunker. The SCBs are under huge threats, and it looks like TLO is going to get ahead in economy.
Wow, TLO is going to be super happy about this. Up 71 to 38 in supply, and there's nothing to stop these Lings from ravaging that middle line of the natural expansion. And Mule desperately trying to get back into the main base, and TLO, look at all this ZerG in the natural. MajOr definitely not expecting this. He doesn't have a lot of units to deal with this. He's having to camp on his main base, and TLO has complete control of the rest of the map.
I mean, MajOr might be better with the crisp, many hours of practice builds, but man, is TLO good at the in-game decision-making. Has solved this puzzle. How does he come back?
There it is.
And that's the solution. Getting a clean GG after nearly losing.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. It's like TLO was on his back foot, didn't necessarily expect this Hellbat timing, lost a lot, and a lot of players would be like, oh, GG sometimes. But he's like, all right, you know, he maybe breezed a little bit, and then he's like, okay, let's counter. Let's see if I can do what he did to me, except better. And he did, and he won the game.
Well, I think that this is a difference between MajOr's play style and what we see out of Polt. Polt did do those sorts of pushes, but they happened much later and it was less focused on the Hellbats. If you look back at MajOr's base, you have a barracks with no add-on, a starport with no add-on, and one factory churning out only Hellions. MajOr put all his eggs in that basket. And when this happens, you will see a lot of games that look like that one. You dealt a ton of damage and then lost. Because you need to deal an extreme amount to make up for how committed you were to that play.
Have a backup plan in case that counterattack comes. You got to be ready for that. Maybe have a tank out or something. But MajOr definitely didn't expect TLO to do that. But I think that's something you kind of have to expect, especially when you do a lot of damage. You got to start making those decisions in your head. Okay, I just got a great advantage there. That was fantastic.
The next map is going to be
King
Sejong Station. This is a map where drop-heavy play is going to be super good for the Terran player. I mean, you expand outward towards your opponent. It's a little bit tricky for Zergs until they can get up that very strong Mutacloud. I would honestly be favoring MajOr if it gets late into the game.
We'll see. TLO has some work to do. He must win. Actually, excuse me. MajOr has some work to do. He has to win 2 in a row here. But before we get into that game number 2, we're going to take a quick break, guys. You're watching MLG at Anaheim 2014. Don't go anywhere. More StarCraft 2 coming up.